Florida, the Sunshine State, 1 or 2 time hit a worst State of the Year award winner. I can't remember exactly which.
Home to Ron DeSantis.
Little
boy Ron DeSantis.
Home to a lot of stuff, including a sheriff that became notable this week. Today for the cold open, I decided I'd want to play you guys a little TikTok of a man speaking about how him and his police force will respond to protests, considering that LA burned all the way down. I think it's our cops' duty to get out there and protect property.
Well, yeah, I went over to visit Los Angeles just the other day, and it's completely off the map.
Yeah, exactly. I drove down, took a quick day trip to Los Angeles, and I didn't get there because it's not there.
The same people who burned the Waymos also salted the earth. So nothing. Those palm trees shall never grow again.
No. You'll get nothing. The land's been raised, and it's over. And this Florida sheriff saw that and decided he wants to protect his community. So let's listen to how he wants to get in there and execute his job.
Magnificent.
And maybe some other things.
If you resist lawful orders, you're going to jail. Let me be very clear about that. If you block an intersection or a roadway in Brevard County, you are going to jail. If you flee arrest, you're going to go to jail tired because we are going to run you down and put you in jail. If you try to mob rule a car in Brevard County, gathering around it, refusing to let the driver leave, in our county, you're most likely going to get run over and dragged across the street.
Oh, my God.
If you spit on us, you're going to the hospital and in jail. If you hit one of us, you're going to the hospital and jail, and most likely get bitten by one of our big, beautiful dogs that we have.
Corny.
Okay.
If you throw a brick, a firebomb, or point a gun at one of our deputies, we will be notifying your family where to collect your remains at, because we will kill you graveyard dead. We're not going to play.
Buddy, we got fucking Billy Badass over here talking like he's on like Facebook. You know what I mean? You should not be able to say any of this as a sheriff, as somebody who like runs a police department. You should not be like rock hard at the idea of running over a protester who's like stopping a car from moving. Look, I think that blocking traffic is annoying too. But I don't think that you should be able to kill somebody who's blocking your car from moving.
This dude would have run over MLK. I mean, they were in the street all the time.
Oh, right? Absolutely.
And it's like this dude heard that police are an occupying army, and he was like, yeah.
He said, yeah, that's a good thing.
Quite literally. And the one that gets me, like, there's a lot of crazy stuff in there. Graveyard dead. That's like crazy.
You don't have to be like the graveyard dead thing tells me that he like wants to be saying this. Like he wouldn't be so literary, if you will.
Yeah, he put thought into that. But also he's like, if you spit on us, we're going to like beat you and then you'll go to jail. If you spit on me, I will escalate.
Yeah, exactly. No, every single thing that he said here was, if you do something, I'll do it back to you, but like worse and harder. I am the cop. He really heard that the state has a monopoly on violence and said, yes, that's me and I will execute, sometimes in the most literal sense of the word.
Jesus
what do you
Christ,
mean
dude.
if you do this, we will sick our big, beautiful dogs on you?
Corny.
Brother is just, one, corny. Massively corny. I see what you're trying to
Trump
do there.
bull.
And two, ridiculous. You should not be able to just get out here and fantasize about brutality, police brutality specifically, at a goddamn press conference.
No, yeah, he's saying like we'll do police brutality and I'm gonna revel in it. And I feel so good about it that I'm gonna write a speech and throw in some shit like graveyard dead.
Like, you think he said that shit in front of the mirror this morning and felt like a badass? He said our officers will run you down. Sure, buddy.
Well, also in his like, if you throw like a bomb or a Molotov or whatever, like we'll kill you. Okay, you know, whatever. They're throwing bombs, and then he said brick.
Yeah.
If you throw a brick, I'm gonna kill you.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
And it's also just like, why are you inventing these scenarios? No, I don't think anybody's been throwing bombs at any of these protests outside of LA, because LA's been nuked.
Nobody's died at these protests.
No.
There hasn't been a single casualty. I mean, there's been people like hit with stuff, rocks have been thrown and stuff like that. In the most serious cases, a Waymo has been lit on fire and whatnot. But no, nobody's died.
I think one person died at a No King's Day protest in Oregon.
Oh,
but
really?
I think the situation was like different. I don't know the exact details about it, but it's not like the protests that were popping off in LA. It's not what he's talking about.
I didn't hear about that.
At the very least.
And there was like 2,000 protests or something like that.
Oh, there millions of people showed up.
Millions of people, yeah.
Something happened somewhere. I don't even think, I'm not sure if it was that crazy. I'm not going to speak definitively on it because I'm not familiar with the story, but it has not been violent in a way that would warrant a response like this. There are very few things that could ever really happen that would ever warrant a response like that. I feel like it should be uncontroversial to say that it's disgusting for a sheriff to be speaking like this at a press conference before anything has even happened.
A person in a position of power.
He's preempting violence. He's preemptively escalating. Some would say a preemptive strike in self-defense.
To tie it right back in. I think I saw a tweet, maybe it was Texas. They were saying some shit like, the police are going out and starting riots before it happens.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, then it's not riots. they're like, by definition, they're not
the police
rioting.
are going out and stopping riots before it happens. It's like, you're just minority reporting these people. You're saying, I can just look at you and tell you're going to commit a crime. And I think that in the history of this country, if anybody who said I can look at you and tell you're going to commit a crime has been just doing a bad thing. Some would say profiling, but I don't know.
Yeah. So, not good, folks.
No, not good at all.
Welcome back to Head in the Office, everybody. It's Monday, June 16, and it's two white boys coming back at you.
What do we do every single week? We come here and talk about the real issues. That's why on this week's episode, Jeremy will be giving his opinion on the Sabrina Carpenter album cover.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've got a deep and controversial take that you'll have to wait to the end.
Exactly. You have to wait all the way to the end to hear Jeremy's take.
This week, before we talk about the take on the album cover, we'll be talking about Iran and Israel. We'll be talking about protests that happened across the country. We'll be talking briefly about the Minnesota lawmakers that were shot and were both of them killed, I think.
There was
one?
I think it was one lawmaker and their spouse was killed and the other was survived.
Yeah, so and all just like the complete blatant lies around the entire scenario.
Media misinformation.
Yeah.
Who'd have thought?
Lots to talk about on that subject, and we'll get to all of that today. But before we get started, before we get into the news, as we always do, I'll remind you to become a patron over at patreon.com/headintheofficepod. You get early access to all of our content, and we're going to be producing some bangers.
We
over the next
do
few
have
weeks.
some bangers lined up over the coming weeks.
Yeah.
I promise you. We've got some guests.
Yeah, we do got some guests coming on, and we've been historically very bad at organizing guest interviews. And just to let you all know, for the next couple of weeks, the Thursday episode will not be this kind of style episode where we're like sitting and talking about the news. There might be a little bit of that, depending on if anything crazy happens. But for the most part, for the next few weeks, the Thursday episodes will be these little interview specials that we're putting together.
And we got some cool people on the interviews. Do we go ahead and announce the first one today?
I think we keep it a surprise until it happens.
Hold it. Okay.
I think we hold off until it happens. Then we'll boost it to everybody. But exciting stuff coming. Patrons will get early access to all of it, of course, only over on the Patreon. Also, if you want to support the show, and if you want to support the fundraiser we're doing, head over to headintheoffice.com.
You want to support the Trevor Project and have a cool logo.
Only 2 more weeks until we pretend that June never happened.
You could put the Rainbow Head in the Office sticker on your laptop because I'm telling you, July 1st at midnight, it's gone.
Exactly. We're reverting all of our logos back. It's going to be like it never, ever happened. You can also support the show by getting a Ground News subscription. It's also a really good tool for you individually. 40% off in the description down below. All of our socials in the description. Join us on Discord. And lastly, you can leave a 5-star review. And last week, we were very upset, perturbed even.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
At the prospect and the reality, really, of having no reviews. But this week, we have many on Apple.
You've come back with force. And, you know, I respect it.
Yeah, and it's good that we get in and read all of these now because, oh boy.
Yeah.
Could you imagine another episode with no reviews?
That's what I'm saying. I'm glad that the community responded because we put out a call to action.
Yeah.
And you people heard it.
We were 3 seconds to midnight. We were 3 seconds to midnight. If we didn't
one
get
more
these
day
reviews,
without reviews until something bad would have happened.
if we wouldn't have got these reviews in, Iran would have developed a nuclear bomb and used it on us.
Absolutely.
So we
they
needed these
nuked the
reviews.
studio.
So this first one here from Reefer Madness, the only podcast on the internet. They say, I'd like to mention that I condemn Hamas in all forms of political silence and violence because I condemn political silence. I have to hand it to these 2 Michiganders, not to be confused with Michigeese. What does that mean?
Whack.
Yeah, whatever. For having the most geopolitical, best and only local podcast on the internet. As a resident of Windiana, I appreciate the twice a week concise and honest coverage of the news in a way that favors me specifically and also probably other people. This podcast has taught me that good things are good and bad things are bad, which is a lesson that I have learned for the first time from these 2 white Midwesterners. Thank you, Jeremy Gage, for everything you do, and congrats on the new studio.
Windiana is crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy. Windiana's damn near should be illegal.
I think so too.
Yeah,
I think so too. That one's fucked up, gang. I can't even lie. This next review, A Friendly Freeloader by Pope Bill Nye the Fourth. First, I would like to condemn Hamas and all political violence. As an undergraduate researcher in the dumpster fire that is Oklahoma, I have firsthand watched as research in this country has been cut back and thrown to the side. And as pick-me Ryan Walters tries to get into the Trump admin by pushing his agenda in our schools, I've been listing since I found the boys on Instagram Reels after the election. Oh, listening since. Guys, I'm a bad reader.
Well, no, they're a bad writer. It's listing since in the review.
Part two.
Exactly. We don't take accountability.
No, never. I mean? Number one humble podcast. I would like to thank the boys for their twice weekly woke indoctrination that comes as a breath of fresh air as I try to combat the misinformation that my MAGA family believes with every fiber of their being. I can always count on my favorite tertiary media source for their biased takes. Thanks and love the pod. And baby, are they biased? Let me tell you.
They're biased, but in a good direction. And we don't pretend we don't have bias.
Exactly.
Of course, it's there. This next one, these Midwestern white boys got a little seasoning from Charles No Schumer. This Soros-funded podcast,
I wish, brother,
is ground zero of the woke mind virus, and boy, have I caught a fever. Although a fairly new and huge fan, I am sadly not a Patreon member, but that will soon change, partially because I love the pod, but mostly because I won't fulfill the work requirements. If Mike Johnson is reading this isn't just a joke, and I do have a job. Please don't kick me off Medicaid or tar and feather me. In all seriousness, Jeremy and Gage bring a good sense of humor to important political discussions, and they do so in a tasteful way. I'd recommend this podcast to anyone who can't stand the depravity of the GOP and the unwillingness of the DNC to do anything about it. If you think good things are good and bad things are bad, you have the intellectual capacity to understand these great Michiganders. It should also be stated that I do condemn Hamas, and Palantir does not need to add me to their kill list. Big on that.
Heavy on that, absolutely. And just a brief moment on the Patreon specifically.
Yep.
If you recall, just a month or two ago, the Wednesday weenie curse used to look much different.
Oh, yeah.
When we were only producing one episode a week, all the news would happen on Monday. We'd get to it like 10 days later for the Wednesday weenies, right? Mm-hmm. Now that curse has just manifested in a new way. Mm-hmm. I swear to God, as soon as we finish recording on Thursday, I go home, already breaking news that kind of invalidates some of the things we talked about, at least a little bit.
Yeah.
New developments that change the situation on the ground, if you will, because I'm a field reporter.
Of course.
And then I wake up Friday morning, and basically everything that we're going to be talking about today happened. Mm-hmm. It's like, wow, what an interesting note. So if you want to avoid a situation where you're waiting for the news or you're behind on the news, you know exactly where to go. This next review, Making Middle-Aged Leftists Feel Better by CMC NJ.
Real.
As a middle-aged leftist in the great Garden State of New Jersey, I was gaslighting myself for years with the crooked pods, but I couldn't stomach them after last November and was left adrift, listening to any old pod that would pass the time. But luckily for me, my 15-year-old came to the rescue and turned me on to Hiddo.
So real.
He even showed me how to start using Apple so I could leave this review. I use Pocket Cast usually. That's crazy.
Pocket Cast, I've never even heard of that.
Number one Pocket Cast listener. Number one Pocket Cast listener. Hiddo is the best political pod around. Jeremy and Gage are funny and informative and talk about U.S. politics as we should be talking. Now, I veritably look forward to episodes dropping. So lucky to have started listening just before you upped it to 2 episodes a week. And it goes without saying, but say it I will. I condemn Hamas and all forms of political violence. Keep up the good work, boys. And keep up the good work, your 15-year-old.
It's necessary.
Wonderful.
I'm glad your 15-year-old has not been radicalized the wrong direction. Many such cases.
We're starting the alt-left pipeline right here. Mm-hmm, that's what's going
on. Next one here, keeping me sane while being surrounded by conservatives from Asgardian Wiccan. They say, first and foremost, I condemn Hamas and all political violence. Oh, just political violence, not all, apparently. I wanted to thank you boys for keeping me sane and updated on the facts while being surrounded by conservatives and bigots. You guys deserve a round of applause. I've been listening to you guys for 3 years now.
3 years?
I live in Michigan, but stuck in Iowa for the time being due to a surgery and being on my parents' insurance. As a queer person, you boys have helped me through this tough time, and I'm very excited to go back to a place where something makes sense. Or where some things make sense. I'm constantly talking y'all up to my very left-leaning cousins and mother. I'm unfortunately a Wednesday weenie until my financial situation gets better, but who knows when that's going to be. I'll be looking forward to new episodes, and thank you guys for your hard work. Praying for you. Hope you have a good and speedy recovery.
Good luck with your surgery and feeling better. I also just got to say, Iowa could have been a paradise. Mm-hmm. Iowa could have been a paradise, but they chose wrong.
Yeah.
They made a bad decision.
Yeah, it's 96% white in Iowa or something like that. Well, not Iowa, Riowa.
It's Riowa. It could have been Iowa, and it could have been paradise. It would have been good for that. We could have had heaven on earth.
And maybe it will be one day, but God willing, I suppose. Yeah.
This last review titled "It's All Men" by MDK SNDK. But I give these two a pass because they consistently have great takes. What can I say? Jeremy and Gage are sharp, articulate, and have just the right amount of humor, breaking down the news in a way that keeps me informed and validated. It's kind of like doom scrolling, but someone's holding your hand and cracking jokes the whole way through. I laugh, I nod, I spiral slightly. Less. I have recommended that everyone give these two Midwest white boys a chance. You'll be happy you did. Soon, you too will be denouncing Hamas and all forms of political violence.
Excellent.
We
appreciate those reviews, and I guess we should get started with our doom scrolling this episode.
Yes,
because we're doing war news.
Right before we get into war news, I got to give a shout out to the 5 Hiddo heads that approached us at the Clark Park No Kings protest in Detroit this weekend. Yeah. Wonderful meeting you all.
Yeah, we were out there checking shit out, and it was actually crazy to be approached by like 5 different people on 5 different people picking us out from the crowd.
That's what I'm saying. People picking out the back of our heads.
Aren't you guys the head in the office? Yeah.
So that was very cool. White boys get
I appreciate you all coming out and saying something to us.
Exactly. It was very cool. It's always surreal seeing people who listen to us talk for like 2 hours a week.
Yeah.
Or sometimes 3 hours a week in person.
Yeah. So thanks for coming out to the protest generally, but more importantly, thanks for saying hey to us.
Heavy on that. Number one podcast.
We'll talk about the protests a little bit more later, but first we got to talk about geopolitics because we're restaking the claim here, folks.
That's right, guys.
The biggest news this week, or at least so far this week, it is Monday after all, but the biggest news over the weekend, I suppose, was the increase in tensions between Israel and Iran, because as we reported in previous episodes, the U.S. has been holding talks between the two countries to establish a new nuclear deal, or at least that's what Trump has been saying, to prevent Iran from developing a nuclear bomb, but allowing them to continue their development of civil nuclear technology. Now, if this sounds familiar at all, it's probably because Obama already did this in 2015.
Oh, but if Obama already did it in 2015, then why isn't it still happening?
Well, of course, Trump withdrew from the deal, the JCPOA as it was called, in 2018. And here we are trying to make the same deal again, but with less leverage because we backed out last time.
Why did he even get rid of the JCPOA?
Well, because Obungler.
Oh, but
Obama.
Precisely, Obama. He did it
because it was Obama. So
that's valid.
And it was a bad deal, and he just replaced it with nothing.
Well,
and now he's trying to do it again.
Trump is famously known for making good deals, the art of the deal, if you will. He's been doing a lot of that this administration. Now, he loves talking about how he can get in any situation and negotiate strongly, and we've got nothing.
Well, and it's funny because we're going to get into like the fighting, which continues to escalate as we speak right now.
Yeah, number one war fighting podcast.
But I think Trump put out a post yesterday and was like, Israel and Iran need to make a trade deal, and this will all be fine. Bro, you can only think about tariffs and trade.
No, it's funny too because he was at the G7, because the G7's also going on this week, so maybe news will pop off about that on like Thursday or something, but I digress. And he was asked like in passing, like, hey, what do you think about what's going on, like Israel and Iran, blah blah blah, and he goes, oh, sometimes you just gotta fight it out. Brother,
that cannot be war. The answer. Could you imagine if Biden said that? Could you imagine if Biden said that?
If Biden said that, they'd be like photoshopping his picture next to like Stalin and Hitler.
Yep. So yeah, the basic worry is if we're to, for a moment, toe the State Department line, as it has been said for under Democratic and Republican administrations, the worry is that if Iran is able to enrich uranium on its own without any supervision, they'll create a nuke and immediately use it on Israel.
Which is just like a crazy line of thinking to say that one, like, to create a nuke, like, okay, yeah, blah, 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 that's probably probable and whatnot, considering, you know, a whole host of factors. But to create that nuke and instantly launch it at Israel, I feel like there's a couple layers of propaganda, dare I say.
Yeah. So that's been the worry for longer than we've been alive, essentially. Like literally since the 90s, they've been saying Iran is like 2 seconds away from creating a nuclear weapon. And Obama's JCPOA was essentially this deal that lifted sanctions on Iran, allowed them to enrich uranium, and in exchange, the UN, including the United States, could come in and inspect their locations functionally whenever they wanted. Yeah. So we were ensuring they weren't creating the uranium, enriching the uranium for a nuke, and they could develop it for civil purposes because nuclear energy is a thing that they want to use it for.
Do you know if they signed on to like the nuclear non-proliferation agreement before that, or is that deal what got them to sign on to the agreement?
I'm not sure.
And allow, what is it, the IAIC to like come in there and inspect their nuclear sites?
I am not. Maybe we're the number 2 geopolitical.
No. We're the number 1 geopolitical.
I don't remember the dates.
We're still broaching the subject. We're still broaching the subject, but it will come up later because it's like there's all this talk, right, about Iran and their nuclear weapons program, and it's funny and whether or not they're keeping it secret, they're developing of a nuke. Israel literally is keeping it secret, their development of a nuke. Israel has nuclear weapons technology. It's estimated that they've had nuclear weapons technology since like the end of the 60s. And they have a policy of nuclear ambiguity or like nuclear obtuseness or whatever, the opaqueness. They will not let anybody know what their weapons capabilities are, and nobody ever yells at them for it. They're the only Middle Eastern country as of now to not be signed on to the nuclear non-proliferation agreement.
Yeah, and they still pretend to this day like they don't have any nukes.
Yeah.
And it's like we just allow them to get away with that while we're being like super hawkish on Iran potentially developing any kind of nuclear capabilities, which again, and I shouldn't say again, but there is no evidence that they've actually developed a nuke. Yeah. It's kind of just being asserted, and as we'll get into, this is the line that Israel is pushing. Now the JCPOA, I have lots of criticisms for the Obama administration, domestic and foreign policy wise. But the JCPOA was one of those things that was an astonishingly objectively good accomplishment of the Obama administration.
I rock with the idea that less weapons are made.
Yeah. It was a diplomatic achievement.
I also rock with the idea of like lifting sanctions on people, because the more you trade with somebody, global trade and whatnot, the less you want to absolutely destroy them in a war. I think it's cool when countries become economically reliant on each other.
Yeah, and being like less aggressive towards Iran works towards normalizing relationships between the two countries, works towards Iran, having normal relationships with other countries as well. Just a generally more peaceful world.
Yes.
Which is ultimately a good thing. But now, and this is one of those rare moments now where you can say solely and unambiguously, this is entirely Trump's fault, the scenario that we're in. Obviously, Joe Biden was bad on Israel, especially when it comes to Gaza. But this situation we're in right now, where Israel is openly attacking Iran unprovoked, as we'll talk about, this is solely Trump's fault.
Yes.
Like it purely individually, if he would have stuck with the JCPOA, we would know precisely what kind of nuclear capabilities Iran was working with. We'd have access to all of their facilities. But instead, we backed out of it, and now here we are.
They would not have had the pretense to preemptively, self-defensively, before anybody does anything to you, strike Iran, if it was not for Trump pulling out of the JCPOA. Because if Iran was still in that deal, they would still be held to like a more rigorous standard. There would be U.S. foreign relations involved in the thing that, Israel would at least be a little bit more reluctant to stomp all over.
Yeah. So this is unambiguously Trump's fault here. But despite these talks continuing and future negotiations being scheduled, which are now, of course, canceled, Israel decided to strike Iran anyways. On Friday, Israel launched a series of quote-unquote preemptive attacks, missile attacks, but of course, unprovoked is the correct word that should be used in reporting here. They launched these attacks against Iran that targeted locations throughout the country. They killed 78 people, wounded something like 300 plus, mostly civilians, according to Iran's UN ambassador. And Israel says they were targeting scientists and military personnel. More strikes have been launched since Friday. A lot of people have died since
this
then.
morning, I read an article saying that Israel defense minister claims credit for attacking Iranian state TV stations and killing reporters, which is like common, a common thing that they've done before. And it's supposed to be a war crime.
Yeah, the nukes are under the TV station.
I get that it's like Iranian state media. You can claim it's propaganda all you want, but like to just come out and say, oh, we have to launch these strikes because we're 3 seconds to midnight because Iran is about to complete a nuke and they will launch it at us, so we have to kill scientists and government leaders and journalists. And also journalists.
And also journalists. And also, if civilians get hit, whatever.
And also
they shouldn't be using human shields. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
I know I hit a population center, but they shouldn't be using human shields.
Exactly. And then this morning, Israel issued an evacuation for Tehran.
How can you
do? You're just gonna what?
I get that. Well, I don't get it, not in like a moral way, but I get their the legitimacy, I suppose, of Israel saying like, yeah, you got to leave North Gaza because they own the land.
There's a different set,
but that's a whole other country
restrictions there. You can't just like tell Iran no, and it's like they did this in Lebanon too, and they just like are getting away with it.
And that's as we'll talk about, that's why they're doing this in Iran now, because nobody has stopped them in all of the other skirmishes they've gotten themselves into and preemptively.
It's kind of like we're seeing the playbook that they did in Gaza just extend into other countries in the Middle East. Like they did the same things they were doing in Gaza to Lebanon. Oh, evacuate, but we're also going to fucking bomb you while you evacuate. And now they're doing the same thing to Tehran. We're going to give an evacuation order for Tehran, Iran's like capital city, or like it's the capital. I'd imagine one of their most densely populated areas too, it being the capital, and then just bombing TV stations.
Well, it's like Iran, like Israel's used to being able to push around smaller opponents. Like Hezbollah is big, but Iran or Israel can sort of push them around, especially with U.S. backing. Iran's a real country, and if you really think they got a nuke or they're that close, maybe you shouldn't do this.
No, I'm saying, and it's like, yeah, like you said with Hezbollah, like, yes, Hezbollah is like an army. Yes, Hezbollah is like a political force and faction in Lebanon. It's not like the Lebanese government, like, really. It's a complicated relationship over there, and then in Gaza, it's like also a complicated relationship. Iran is just Iran. Iran is the cultural hegemon in the region.
Yeah, and Iran's enormous geographically, and Iran has like 90 million people in it. Like, it's a real country.
Famously also like uninvadable on the ground with all the mountains and whatnot. Like, it's kind of an impossible situation that they're forcing themselves in. It's almost like their desire for war isn't like rational. And maybe they just want to do it so that Netanyahu can stay in power.
Well, but Gage, have you thought about like the blood and soil? Like, our blood is in the soil.
100%.
So we have to protect it. But yeah, as you said, the pretext for Israel's attacks here is that Iran is literally seconds away from getting a nuke and will immediately use it on Israel. Of course, as we said, this lie has been pushed by the media, both in the United States and Israel, for longer than either of us have been alive. But it's worth reading what Israeli UN Ambassador Danny Danon told NPR, quote, "We obtained the information about the secret program that included all the necessary parts to put together a bomb. It was a military program that was hidden from the international community. And once we realized that they are planning this game, and that they're getting very close to the point of no return, we couldn't take that risk." So literally, we have secret information that they have a nuke, and no, we're not going to share it.
They're hiding information from us and the world, so we're going to continue to hide it from you, but use that hidden information as justification to kill a lot of people.
Yeah, it's literally it's just trust me. Just trust me.
Guys,
I promise.
I saw it.
Have I ever led you astray?
She goes to another school.
Now, naturally, Iran has responded with retaliatory strikes since Friday, which have killed around 20 people, I think, as of today in Israel.
And it's also important to note that it's like, this was very much a situation that was not going to go the way of the last time that the two exchanged blows. When Israel assassinated, what was it, the Hamas like political leader in Tehran.
Yeah. They also hit an Iranian guy in Syria.
Yes, and they also hit an Iranian guy in Syria, and they did the embassy. They blew up the embassy in Damascus.
In Syria,
that's what it was. It's not. It wasn't going to be like that because they did those strikes. Iran said they were going to retaliate. Then Iran sent drones that Israel just shot down because it's very slow drones.
And then that was that.
And that was that. And it was kind of a situation where you could now analyze it and say, like, maybe Iran is just doing something just to do something, and they don't actually want to stoke a broader conflict, which I think is a correct analysis.
Incredibly measured response that time around.
Incredibly measured response, just doing it just to doing it, knowing that it's not really going to do anything, and if it does, blah blah blah, you retaliated. The way that Israel struck Iran here did not leave Iran room to like do something like that. You know what I mean? I don't like war. I'm not pro-war. I don't like seeing things go on, but it's like you can't just invade a country.
I'm not even pro-Iran.
I'm not pro-Iran either, which is another conversation too, seeing a lot of TikToks because, you pop off, war happens in the modern era and it's just, you see TikToks of violence.
Well, and you pick a side and whichever side you pick is good entirely.
Yeah, war is team sports. And that's why I see a lot of people in these comments being like, I stand with Iran. And it's like, not to be too CIA-pilled. Not to take the State Department talking point like a good little boy, but like, world leading sponsor of terror.
Well, yeah, no, Iran, the issue with Iran is like, all of Iran's faults are kind of our fault.
Oh, yeah.
Because of all the fucking we did with them.
Explicitly what happened is the Islamic Revolution, was it 70, in like the late 70s, toppled the US-backed monarch that we instilled after Iran was like, Iran used to be like a really cool, modern like place. Yeah. And that's not to say that, they're backwards people now, like they're not modern, but like Iran used to be a really cool, like damn near progressive place. And then we did a coup because we didn't like that. I think they had like a socialist leader or something like that.
Yeah, no, that's exactly
installed the U.S.-born monarch, and then there was an Islamic revolution, and that's why we have the Ayatollah, and that's why they're in the situation they are right now. Like, it's kind of a reaping sowing moment.
Yeah, no, we were out here just like assassinating political leaders for fun. Yeah. It's one of those moments where you pull the rubber band too far and then it snaps.
Yeah.
And now they're like in, Islamic fundamentalist country. And it's entirely our fault that they are the way that they are. And we've done nothing to remedy the situation. And we're only making it worse with our support for Israel.
Really further ostracise them and ally ourselves harder with Israel. But it's just, it's a bad situation. And we kind of have our hands in every side of this.
Yeah. So naturally, Iran, with nuance, with our position, knowing the nuance of our position now.
Yes.
Iran, of course, launched retaliatory strikes. Israel accused Iran of intentionally hitting population centers.
Mossad is in Tel Aviv.
Which, Mossad's in Tel Aviv. And probably, I wouldn't put it past Iran to intentionally hit a civilian building. But you've been doing this for a long time.
That's kind of the name of your game.
Yeah.
I saw I don't know, I think it was posted by the BBC, but it was with a journalist. I don't know if it was an Israeli journalist or a journalist with the BBC, but it was a video of them in like an apartment building that got hit by an Iranian missile in Tel Aviv. Mm-hmm. And the journalist said, almost, I quote, "It looks like Gaza, not Tel Aviv."
Yep.
Hey, buddy. Hold on a minute now. Yes. I think we need to back up and examine why that's bad.
It's just an immediate admission from the government, from journalists, from civilians, whatever, that the people in Gaza aren't people.
Like, we're the good guys. It's not supposed to look like this for us. They're all the bad people.
Yeah, but how could you treat me the way I treat people? That's crazy.
What happened to the golden rule?
Exactly. Of course, we never want any civilians to die here. No. This is not a pro-civilian death show. Surprise, surprise.
No, absolutely not. But it's like there are like numbers that are happening right now too. And it's like, I think you mentioned 300 plus civilians have died in Iran so far. And
those 300 plus wounded on Friday.
Okay. I saw numbers published on Sunday. I'm not sure about this morning, that 224 people have been injured in Iran and 90% of them have been civilians. So that's about 200 civilians.
Well, I mean,
injured.
They're hitting apartment buildings.
Whereas in Israel, it was about 24 with like more wounded like that. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to sit here and like do a thing where it's like, oh, blah, 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 and like compare civilian deaths, because any civilian death is a tragedy. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? I think we've earned enough nuance on this podcast to come into this discussion like that. But it's just like, Israel is posting that Iran is targeting civilian centers. Israel's killed like multiple times more civilians in Iran that have been killed in Israel. That's not a good thing on either side. Mm-hmm. It's really not. And they just issued an evacuation warning for Tehran and bombed a TV station. Mm-hmm. It sounds like a crocodile tears moment. It sounds like a little pot kettle going on.
Mm-hmm. And it's like, yeah, okay, civilians dying is bad. Like, I've seen children getting hurt and children dying on both sides already so far. But like, Israel struck Iran unprovoked as diplomatic negotiations were continuing to prevent the thing that Israel was striking Iran to prevent, which is Iran getting a nuke. Like, there are already diplomatic negotiations to prevent the thing that you're striking Iran for now. You needlessly escalated the situation completely unprovoked.
That's like the big thing. I feel like that's like the central issue here as well, other than them doing the bad thing and starting a war. It's the fact that like negotiations, they weren't going like the best. They had not broken down. There were more rounds literally scheduled for like days after
it was scheduled for
Sunday,
2 days,
right?
from yesterday. Now they've been canceled, of course.
Yeah. You can't do that. You just should not be able to do that and get away with it, man.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know what like not getting away with it looks like. Obviously, when you talk about war and people's lives on the line and the fact that I'm anti-war, I'm principally anti-war. I don't want anybody to die, but like, Jesus fucking Christ, man.
Yep. I don't know what like. I don't know what they expected. I know Israel expected a broader war, and as we'll get into it, I think that's purposefully the intent for someone like Netanyahu. But of course, Iran's going to respond. You launch crazy attacks. You wounded 300 plus people, mostly civilians. Of course, they're going to respond like this. Not to mention that you've been doing a genocide to the Palestinian people, which the Iranian government might not genuinely care about, but they'll use it as a pretext to continue their military operations.
Absolutely,
and that's something you just willingly gave over to them. Something that the United States has obviously been in support of. But I think now it's time for propaganda hour.
Yes.
There's been lots of propaganda, lots of manufacturing consent, lots of lies, just blatant lies.
There has been.
Or omissions that have been told. And before we get into like the nitty-gritty of the propaganda that we've seen, I want to offer the counter narrative before the claims. Israel struck Iran not because they found undeniable proof of nuclear weapons, but because Netanyahu knows that he is out of power if war ever ends.
I think that's almost exactly, literally the analysis, and I think they're kind of telling that for us, too. I read an AP article earlier before we recorded the show, and I'm going to read you a little excerpt. Quote, "Now, just days into the ongoing operation against Iran, the opposition, as in like the opposition party to Netanyahu and Israel, has closed ranks behind the effort, suspending months of bitter criticism against Netanyahu and his handling of the war in Gaza. Quote, it's not the right moment to do politics," opposition leader and former Prime Minister Yair Lapid told the Associated Press on Monday in his first international media interview since the start of the operation against Iran.
There it is.
Politics and war are not inseparable things. Those two things are not mutually exclusive.
Wars are political.
I would argue that they're the same. I'd argue that they exist in a broad umbrella.
Yeah, so Netanyahu knows that he's essentially out of power if war ever ends.
Yeah.
People can see what's happening in Gaza, even if they like fuck with most of what's happening in Gaza. There are criticisms of Netanyahu to have. Like, he hasn't brought home the hostages, and people will criticize him for that while not actually caring about the genocide, right? Like, it's complicated. But as long as he can keep the Israeli military engaged in active conflicts, then he's going to stay in power. And even if this doesn't spiral into like an active hot war where there's like, troops facing each other, as long as he can like sporadically and over time continue these military strikes, he's going to stay in power.
Well, he can also continue and use like the fear that's obviously running throughout Israeli civilians right now. He's like, remember what they did to you. Remember you having to leave your apartment at 4 a.m. and go to a bomb shelter. That's what I'm here to defend against. That's what this is done for. It's all so that he can just stay in power.
Yeah.
And it's like Netanyahu is doing the thing that conservatives in the U.S. claim Zelensky is doing.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like criticism against Zelensky and how the Ukraine constitution doesn't allow elections to happen during wartime. And it's like, that's exactly what Netanyahu's trying to do right now.
Yeah, except Ukraine was invaded.
Ukraine is fighting a defensive war. Israel's just provoking literally everyone around him.
Yeah, just for fun. And even if there was some kind of justification for these attacks, even if they do have actual proof that that Iran is like close to getting a nuke, even though this has been a lie they've been pushing for years and years. First of all, Iran's nuclear program is mostly underground.
Yeah.
I know that Israel has like bunker buster missiles, but like you're not going to get rid of the nuclear program entirely just with airstrikes. It's not going to happen.
I think I've read like explicitly Israel would need U.S. support to be able to get the bunker buster bombs they need.
Yeah, and two, if I was Iran and Israel started dropping missiles all around the country and killing civilians, I'd be trying to make a nuke even harder now.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
If I was like close to a nuclear power who's explicitly just like anti-signing any of the we don't want to have nuclear powers anymore treaties, I'd be scared too. I think I would need a nuke out of self-defense. When you have a situation in the world where there are a few countries scattered across the place that have capabilities that could just wipe entire countries away and leave the land salted, basically, just absolutely raised, just uninhabitable for years to come, that's kind of scary. And you're kind of put in a position where you have no real power against that should any of these places want to start fucking with you. The existence of nukes necessitates other countries to have nukes or want to develop nukes so they can be on the same playing field. You can't do like a mutually assured destruction kind of tit for tat if you don't have a nuke, because the other guy can just say, fuck you.
Yeah, no, and that is like the logic of mutually assured destruction, to the extent that it's logical, is that if everybody has nukes, then nobody will use them because then we'll all die.
Yeah.
Like that is what mutually assured destruction is. And everybody around Iran has a nuclear weapon and Iran doesn't. And the idea in 2015 was like, okay, we're going to allow you to enrich uranium and we'll normalize relations with you. Just let us make sure you're not making nuclear weapons. Well, and Iran took the gamble on that. And again, that's not to say that Iran is like an entirely good country and I approve of their politics or anything like that, but they took the gamble. They listened to us. We did diplomacy. Trump backed us out, and here we are.
And it's like the whole point of the nuclear non-proliferation agreement is to eventually like just like disarm nuclear weapons, and it feels like nobody's serious about that.
Because like nukes are bad.
Nukes are bad, guys. I don't like the idea that we have these weapons of literal mass destruction.
Only two have been like used in war in history, and if they're ever used again, the world ends.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like
that's absolutely horrifying when they were used.
Yeah, like if any country on the planet starts using nukes against another nuclear power, like that's just it. Like life on Earth is just done. You know what I mean? And so it's not good. It's not good. But like when it comes to striking Iran here and trying to like prevent their nuclear proliferation or getting a nuke at all, it's just sort of like a violence begets violence situation. If Iran is working towards a nuke, there's a reason for them doing that. It's because they feel threatened and they want to build a nuclear bomb. By hitting them now, you're not doing anything to ameliorate the conditions that push them towards getting a nuke in the first place, which is the existence of nukes in every country around them.
Yes.
And the lack now of a diplomatic solution because Trump backed out.
And one of those countries that has nukes being explicitly hostile towards you, where intelligence comes out all the time of Israel being like, hey, CIA, should we kill the Ayatollah?
Exactly. Mossad constantly trying to kill the Ayatollah. It's the same thing with Gaza, right? Like we said back at the start of this most recent episode, like back in 2023, October 7th, that if Israel came in and like killed my entire family, like if I'm a Palestinian in Gaza, the first thing I'd be thinking to do is start Hamas too.
Yes.
because that's just the cycle of violence.
That's kind of like what you do when you've been so extremely disenfranchised, when you've been so extremely traumatized as well. You're not going to be thinking right. You're not going to be thinking, I should condemn political violence.
Yeah. So very clearly, this is not a defensive act. This is very obviously an offensive war. Nobody calls any of their military acts offensive nowadays, though.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think there's probably been an offensive war since World War II, even though there clearly has. Nobody's called their wars offensive since World War II. Even Putin says his shit is like defensive. You know what I mean? So nobody is going to go with the label of offensive war. It's always for defensive purposes. At least that's the narrative from their state departments.
Which is just like so disappointing that we have big outlets like CNN, CNBC, the AP, everywhere else just kind of repeating the line that it's a preemptive strike. I feel like we should have more, I don't know if it's journalistic integrity or just something that would let us call bullshit on something. At least don't put in your headline, Israel launches preemptive strike. You could put in the body, Israel says they launch a preemptive strike, as long as you correct it and say that they attacked first.
Well, yeah, they attacked first as negotiations were happening. Yeah. Like, negotiations were on. This wasn't like a situation where, like, they were both doing, like, the arms race, building up their military stockpiles, and they just decided, like, shit, we got to act now. They were in peace negotiations.
We were doing peak diplomacy.
Yeah. or we were pretending to, at least. I don't know, like, the actual content of these negotiations, but Trump has tried to use these attacks on Iran as a wedge to push Iran towards a deal. Doesn't seem to be working. Trump is kind of just doing the thing he did with Putin, where he's like, guys, stop, please. Make a trade deal and everything will be okay. From CBS, though, quote, Israel's defense minister warned Saturday that Tehran will burn if Iran continues firing missiles at Israel. And I guess that's further reinforced by the news that you mentioned today with Tehran being told to evacuate.
And it's just like, you can't, it's the same fucking thing they did with Gaza, right? Yeah. You can't get out there and say they're attacking civilians and then make statements as a person in power that Iran's capital will burn.
Yeah.
You can't do that. Or, like, I guess you can, but you shouldn't be allowed to do that.
And, like, it's fundamentally not a negotiation if your response is agree to this or I'm going to kill you.
Yeah.
That's just a threat.
It's just like the Hamas negotiations where they went and said, kill yourself and then I'll leave.
Exactly. Like, you're not negotiating at this point. You're just threatening people. And an Iranian official already after these attacks went on the record to say that the nuclear talks at this point are, quote, meaningless.
And now they're trying to pull out of the NPT. They're trying to get out of the nuclear non-proliferation agreement. An official came out and said that they're advancing a bill through the Iranian parliament. We don't know if it's going to pass. I mean, there's like a complicated history with Iran and like the nuclear proliferation agreement. I think like 2 weeks ago they got dinged by the board that oversees it as like, hey, you guys might be developing a nuclear weapon, but like. That would have been news if the bigger news of Israel starting a war didn't happen.
Yeah, and like I've seen a lot of people arguing that Iran, like for years, has been saying they want to completely decimate Israel, like for anti-Semitic reasons. And to the extent that that's true, like, yeah, obviously that's bad. But first of all, we don't fund Iran, so my critiques are less salient of Iran because we don't have like money that we're giving to that country.
Yeah, and it's like I already don't feel like there's much that I can do to stop Israel, but there's even less I can do to stop Iran.
Yeah. No, exactly. And if we wanted to push Iran to a place where they are less like anti-Semitic or hostile to groups outside of their own, then you do that through diplomacy, through pressure from groups like the UN and other international organizations. You don't do that by actively killing people because that just starts a hot war and maybe World War III if they do actually have nukes.
Maybe it's not good for the world, or maybe it's not good even for just like a relationship. If you want somebody to change their behavior and you push them and force them into a corner where you isolate them and tell them we'll lash out at you if you don't do this, maybe they'll just kind of be reinforced in what they were already doing,
especially with violence.
Hating you.
Like, especially with violence. Like, I would understand if, you know, we passed like at the UN, like a treaty against child labor, right? Like you get dinged with sanctions if there's proof that there's child labor happening in your country. I'd be perfectly fine with that. You're not going to get a country to stop doing child labor if you just start like bombing population centers.
Yeah.
That just makes a country angry and will just start a hot war, which doesn't benefit the people that you're supposedly, quote unquote, trying to help.
Yeah, no, you bomb population centers or you just throw wicked sanctions on them. You isolate that country. If that country becomes isolated, they have no incentive to normalize to like the norms that you want them to get to. They'll just keep doing the child labor because it's working for them. And now they don't have anybody nagging.
Yeah, and then they'll be pushed towards countries like Russia and China that will be in their corner because you're just being actively hostile to them. Again, can't express how much this didn't have to happen if Trump never backed out of the JCPOA in 2018. You can also add on top of that things like the Abraham Accords or moving the embassy in Israel, just things that have further inflamed tensions for no real reason. Just like actively destabilizing the region for fun.
And it's like, why does no American president want to stand up to a guy from Philly? Mm-hmm. I just like, this also could have been stopped if we just had a normal relationship with
I don't even think, it's not even like standing up to a guy from Philly. Maybe in Biden's case it was, but it's just like everything Israel does, they do because we allow them to.
Yeah.
If we had anything to say, if we just called him up and said like, hey dog, no, he wouldn't do it. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like when we see him doing something like striking Iran or continuing the genocide in Gaza under Biden, I feel like it's because the people pulling the levers, doing the foreign policy, are cool with whatever they're doing.
Well, the happiest people this weekend were Nikki Haley and Pete Hegseth. Mm-hmm. I know they absolutely smiled ear from ear as soon as they got that intelligence report. They're like, yes, I can't wait. I love stoking flames.
Yeah. And of course, like, AIPAC and the other Israel-aligned political action committees in the United States are certainly a consideration, especially when it comes to like Congress people. Mm-hmm. Lots of people get money from AIPAC because they have a lot of money. But I think when it comes to like the presidency and foreign policy, I think like outwardly they can't say like, yeah, I'm pro-death.
Yeah.
But like, for example, under the Biden administration, I don't think that like Antony Blinken cared that much that there was a genocide in Gaza. I think he might have been cool with it.
Yeah. I know we pulled out and like we're not doing the war on terror like actively, or at least there was a brief reprieve when it comes to the war on terror and our incursions into the Middle East.
We got woke for a minute.
But I don't think the like I guess anti-Islamic, anti-Muslim sentiments have really left the U.S. government and the people who run these intelligence agencies, because we have to remember that like 20 years ago they were torturing people in prisons.
Yeah.
In like CIA black sites, they were just like torturing dudes.
Yeah.
Well, and like false information.
Early 2000s, Guantanamo Bay. Like we were actively profiling and torturing people.
We are not far removed from a policy of just complete and utter objective brutality against Muslim people and treating them like they were less than human.
Yeah.
And that still definitely remains. I mean, fuck, we're like 80 years removed from the Civil Rights Act, and look how racist the country is now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 60 years removed from the Civil Rights Act.
60 years, that's right.
But like, George W. Bush in the 2000s, they established Guantanamo Bay. Or they were using Guantanamo Bay specifically because it was a quote-unquote law-free zone.
Yeah.
That was it was intended, they were torturing people purposefully on that land.
They said, we can't do torture, so we'll go somewhere else and do the same torture.
The United States government, bad. Not in
bad.
favor of the State Department, historically bad institution. Another narrative I've seen pushed is this like praise for Israel's quote-unquote precision, paired with images of like, I saw like there was an apartment building and it just had like one smoking hole in the side of the wall. And they're like, look how precise Israel is. First of all, why did we flatten Gaza if this is how precise we can be?
Yep.
And second of all, that is a civilian apartment complex. You have no idea who else was killed because you launched a goddamn missile into the side of a window.
And it's like, you have no idea. You have no idea if you're going to hit a load-bearing wall. You know what I mean? Like, you have no idea, like, the fucking code of that building. You hit a building with a missile like that in goddamn Miami, it's collapsing. Mm-hmm. Just like a building collapsed unprovoked in Miami like 4 fucking years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you have no idea the collateral damage that you could cause when you launch any goddamn ballistic around. Mm-hmm. It's not some cool thing that this missile can only, I guess, kill somebody in one apartment. I don't think it's cool at all.
And it's like they're in a position where they have to launch these quote unquote precision missiles, or like the computer guided ones, because they can't drop dumb bombs like they were in Gaza, because they can't just fly over and drop dumb bombs. Otherwise, they'll get shot out of the sky.
Although they're claiming that they've established air superiority over Iran now. So
maybe they can then. Maybe I'm wrong.
Who knows what's going to happen?
Maybe we will get the 2,000-pound dumb bombs. Got to mention, as always, of course, that they are dropping bombs or shooting missiles over to Iran with our money.
Yes.
They can only do this shit because we funded them. So that is our taxpayer money funding a war with Iran now.
Joe Biden could have cut the money faucet off like two fucking years ago.
He could have done it so quick, man.
We wouldn't have 50,000 people dead in Gaza. And two, we wouldn't have I don't know, another major war started in the world. What happened to no more wars? Mm-hmm. What happened to all the dumbass Republicans at these rallies for Trump chanting, no more wars, no more wars? What happened to peace in the Middle East? Jared Kushner, I'd like to know.
No, now the line is Israel's doing our dirty work in the Middle East. We should be grateful for them.
We should be grateful for more wars, actually. I'm a dove.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we have to fight war to end war. Freedom is slavery. You know what I mean?
Yes, sir.
Trump has seemingly backed off from these attacks, claiming the United States did not assist in conducting them, but he also said that if Iran goes after like any U.S. military sites in the region, that we will respond. But again, make no mistake, nothing Israel does happens without U.S. permission, whether that be explicit permission, like, yeah, go attack Iran, or implicit, like, I'm not going to tell you no. all of everything. Israel is just a military base for the United States. It's a fake country.
Oh, absolutely.
So
it's the size of New Jersey.
Keep that in mind. And my last critique here is like, to your point about public opinion and like the pro-peace ticket, who wants to go and die for Israel right now?
Not me. I can tell you right now, not me. There's like a very small list of things I'd die for, and they pretty much start at end at my like natural end. It certainly does not contain dying in a desert or dying in a desert. Like,
is there genuinely any person or group of people in America that are like, absolutely, I want to go fight a war for the United States right now? Like,
I don't know.
Who does this appeal to? You know what I mean? Nobody has the appetite for this kind of thing.
It's not like it appeals to like the Nazis on the far right. They're on the wrong side of everything. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's not even like they're fighting a defensive war like Ukraine, where it's like, okay, some people may feel the need that they can go volunteer and fight over there. Like some guys do. Yeah. It's just like, I guess it's the PMCs.
I don't know who is actually interested in the United States getting into another war in the Middle East, potentially deploying U.S. troops in the Middle East, because like that, of course, is on the table. Who wants this right now? I'm not dying for Israel.
No, I'm saying, and it's like, is there even money in it like there was in like Iraq and Afghanistan, I guess? Like other than money for like Raytheon and Palantir, like the military company Palantir. There's probably money for other Palantir too. Both of them are probably getting in on this action.
Well, Palantir, it's the same thing, right?
It's the same company.
Yeah, they do military stuff.
Oh, nice.
Palantir worked with the IDF in 2023. Like their AI shit, yeah.
Their AI shit that went bad. Lovely, man.
Yeah.
Lovely,
so
man.
I don't know who in the U.S. public, like what group of voters is like, absolutely, let's go to war with the Middle East. However, I know we shouldn't doubt the ability of Trump supporters to rationalize literally anything he does.
Yes.
Their ideology isn't one of like truth or consistency. It's just whatever Trump says is law. So maybe they'll be fine with it. But I think now here's a really good opening for Democrats to be starkly anti-war. Get rid of the hawkish shit. Like you don't like Schumer should not be out here saying like, oh, Taco Trump, he's being soft on Iran right now.
We should not be allying ourselves with Nikki Haley, who ran her presidential campaign on we need to nuke Iran and invade Mexico.
And she just tweeted, finish them.
What else could that mean?
Yeah, like nuke Iran.
What else could that fucking mean, dog? These people are unserious. Like, I don't understand. Well, I do, because people cognitive dissonance and whatnot. People don't actually pay attention to politics and elections and who they elect and whatnot. But it's just like, it's all right there. It's all right in front of you. It doesn't even take like a crazy level of analysis to get out there. It's not like you're making an argument against capitalism. It's not like you're making an argument for making private companies public or any of these other economic things that we argue for. It's Israel attacks a sovereign nation unprovoked, and it might get us into a war. That should be really easy to understand that that's bad.
Yeah. Doesn't really take much.
It doesn't take much at all.
Yeah. So shout out.
Yep.
Let's hope it's not World War III. I hate commercials.
Me too.
I hate listening to them. I hate when I hear them, whether it's on TV or on podcasts.
Grr, I just can't stand commercials.
They're the worst. And the one place you can go to avoid commercials, like this one you're listening to right now, is patreon.com/headintheofficepod. Become a patron, and you get early access to our episodes, and they're all completely commercial free. No more interruptions.
And you could be one of our friends.
And that's arguably the more important point.
And, you know, in trying times like this, friendship is what we really need.
Friendship's really important. And you can buy your way into being a friend of ours by heading over to patreon.com/headintheofficepod. Again, early access to episodes, no commercials, access to all of our content before anyone else sees it. Become a patron.
Yeah, speaking of things that don't make sense, we first we got to talk about the protests, which do make sense.
Protests,
but then we'll be getting into a little bit of Trump talk in a little bit, and boy, is he making some contradictory statements.
That's right. So over the weekend, protests kicked off around the nation. We saw some of you at the protest that happened under the banner of No Kings, of course. Millions of people attended their local rallies nationwide. Ultimately, I think it was a pretty good show of force. Pretty radical, too. I mean, Rashida Tlaib spoke at ours.
Oh, yeah, no.
People were very pro-Palestine.
I was not expecting the speeches to be, like, as, like, genuinely, like, I guess, like, radical as I thought they would. Like, there was this one guy up there with, like, a red shirt or something like that. He was dropping information I didn't even know.
Yeah, so shout out. I'm glad to see that. It does sort of feel like Trump one-coded in the sense that, like, it's just kind of an anti-protest. Like, there's no demands associated with it, really. The protest was made in relation to Trump's military parade that happened on the same day. So it was, like, planned ahead of time. And then, of course, the ICE raids and the stuff happening in LA got lumped into what was being protested against. But there's not, like, a list of demands.
Yeah.
You know, there's not like actionable goals. This was sort of the issue with BLM as well. Like there was a lack of a sense of direction, which allows the media and certain political actors to hijack what you're actually trying to accomplish. So I didn't love that aspect of it, but like any show of force, any show of resistance is better than no show of resistance.
Yeah, exactly.
But,
it's a situation where it's like there was a protest that was just the thing that united the protests across the country was the idea that like we don't like what's going on. What is going on? Different people didn't like different things. And I wish that was nailed in a little bit more, but I think there's still opportunity for that. I still think it was, unfortunately, we're still early in the administration.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we're 6 months in, so I guess more things will happen and people will, I guess, come into like more organized forms.
I'm not sure though, because that never really happened in Trump 1. Like
that's true, but Trump 1 wasn't this bad this quick.
That's true. But yeah, signs range from like shit that would get you put on a watch list to like, if we elected Kamala, we'd be out to brunch right now.
Yeah,
it's like real corny shit and shit that like would probably get you put in jail if a cop caught you with it.
It was interesting to see a mix of like that and then people there and like with their Palestinian flags.
Yeah,
I was like, oh wow.
Yeah, it was a wide variety of stuff. On the same day, Trump held his birthday military parade, which just looked very sad and pathetic. Probably irrelevant by the time this episode comes out.
It did.
But it was very sad.
Man, it was so funny seeing the views of just like empty stands.
Yeah.
Just empty stands. But there was a group that was there that I do need to highlight too. There was a group that decided to show up and fill the stands for Trump's military parade, his birthday parade, and it was the Michigan State Legislature.
Mm-hmm.
The Michigan State Legislature called off like their session of Congress this week. They have 2 weeks until they need to pass a budget, and they called off a whole week so that they could fly to D.C. to watch the parade.
Nobody wants to work anymore.
Nobody wants to work anymore. It's absolutely ridiculous. They have a budget that needs to be passed.
Yeah.
And they said, we're going to take a whole week off of work. I could never do that. You could never do that. Nobody that works a job could ever fucking do that unless you're a senator, unless you're like working politics. Because apparently if you're a legislature, you can just take months off. You can just take a week off. You can just do whatever the fuck you want for whatever reason you want. Going to a military propaganda parade on some president who wants to be the king's birthday is not a reasonable reason to call off work.
No, like I don't understand. And I know that they're going there for a meeting, quote unquote. They're meeting with Trump, but you could have just gone to the meeting one day, come back and got your ass back to work the second day.
You don't need to go on vacation in DC for a week to have a meeting. You can fly in, fly out.
Yeah, it's pathetic. It's really sad. Especially because the stands were like totally empty. There was that one clip of like a tank rolling by, and then it goes, "Brought to you by our sponsor, Palantir." It was like, well, that just feels apt, right? That fits.
I didn't watch any of the parade because honestly, it was just there was too many other things going on. You know what I mean? And it already like nobody showed up. Nobody really protested it. Nobody showed up. It was just a sad event in general. But I do wonder, did they do the costumes?
Yeah, they did.
They dressed.
Yeah, they did. They did the costumes, the eras.
But he mandated the soldiers do cosplay. That's crazy.
They said put on drag.
Put on drag.
Maybe for some of them at least. But yeah, no, it was crazy. It was crazy. It was just very sad, very pathetic. I do wonder, like, the Trump administration can't even do authoritarianism right.
No, they can't. They can't even like drum up like support. Like that's the thing to get your people going, especially because it's like. He had the excuse. He had the Flag Day excuse. He had the military 250th birthday excuse. It didn't have to just be his birthday parade. But honestly, at this point, I feel like if he threw a parade that was just for his birthday, it'd get more turnout.
Turns out a military parade is just boring as hell, and nobody wants to go to it. So
why would I want to go watch D.C. streets be entirely clogged up for like, I don't know, 2 fucking hours just to sit and watch tanks go by?
It's kind of funny that like nobody even showed up to protest it, though. People are just like, whatever.
Okay, I'll go to Clark Park in Detroit.
Real. In some related news, Trump has seemingly signaled a shift in immigration enforcement policy, not because the protests were effective, of course, not because he's listening to people, but because the agricultural industry said, hey, dog, you're hurting profit.
Yeah, we can't have that.
And so we have a quote from Trump here from Truth Social. He posted, quote, "Our great farmers and people in the hotel and leisure business have been stating that our very aggressive policy on immigration is taking very good, long-time workers away from them, with these jobs being almost impossible to replace. In many cases, the criminals allowed into our country by the very stupid Biden open border policy are applying for those jobs. This is not good. We must protect our farmers, but get the criminals out of the USA. Changes are coming." So first of all, literally anybody could have told you and did tell you that mass deportations would cripple the agricultural industry.
Yeah.
Very obvious.
I also think it's really funny that the criminal MS-13 gang members who flooded over the border to sell fentanyl to your kids are applying for jobs in one of the most like underpaid, grueling, and time-intensive manual labor fields just in the country.
Yeah, I was gonna say like, all the criminals, quote unquote, are pouring over just to work some of the hardest jobs they can find.
All these big scary gang members with face tattoos that are here to like kill your daughter or some shit decided, I'm gonna go pick oranges in Florida.
Yeah, like maybe
I need to make side money because selling fentanyl to kids isn't paying the bills, I guess.
Maybe ICE is having a hard time finding all the criminals, quote unquote, because there just isn't that many of them. A lot of undocumented people that come here illegally, they aren't over here committing violent crimes. They commit crimes at lower rates than U.S. citizens do. So maybe finding all the criminals that you've been talking about is hard because they just don't exist.
Yeah,
that might be the problem here. So interesting shift that we're seeing.
I also think it's funny too because like specifically when it comes to like agriculture and farms and like hotel work as well, we have talked about, and I think we talked about this last episode, like our criticisms of the whole thing and how conservatives love to come at people on the left and say you're just pro-slavery, you just want these people over here for exploited labor. Those people notably silent about this move. Those people notably silent about Trump saying, oh no, yeah, our farmers actually do exploit these people and use them for cheap labor and their bottom lines are going to go under if we get rid of them. So these are the good ones, I've decided now.
Yeah.
These aren't just these are the ones that were already here, not the ones Biden let in, not the 20 million people Biden let in. The ones that Biden let in are replacing the ones that we deported, and that's a bad thing because they're criminals who are applying for jobs.
Yeah, I do wonder, like, so we'll get into like the ICE order specifically, but like, how was this resonating with Stephen Miller? You know what I mean?
Oh no, he must be fuming because he's like ideologically committed to like a white supremacist project, like a project of getting out people because they're brown.
Yeah, he was on Jake Tapper like at the start of the administration, and Jake Tapper's like, well, what about all these the farms, hotels, and whatnot? And he's like, I'm sure you're not saying we should use cheap exploited labor to provide our country with food.
Yep.
And it's like, okay, what about this?
Yeah, what about this? Come on now. He's
literally doing the thing.
Say something. Like, Stephen Miller, you are the president. Like,
yeah, it's hard to believe, but according to the New York Times, ICE ordered agents to, quote, hold on all worksite enforcement investigations and operations on agriculture, including aquaculture and meatpacking plants, restaurants, and operating hotels. Workplace raids are still going to be happening, but they're just not allowed in those specific industries. Very, very strange shift that can only be explained by money.
And it's absolutely one of those shifts that's like to Stephen Miller's dismay.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's absolutely one of those things where Trump saw it. And I think that Trump doesn't have he's not tied down to anyone like ideology, any one ideological project. He's just racist, not necessarily like a white supremacist by thought.
Well, yeah, he hired undocumented laborers for his companies and hotels and whatnot.
Exactly.
Like he knows the game.
He's one of those racists that like doesn't like people, but like it's about the economy. At the end of the day, he is a New York businessman. As bad of a businessman as he is, like he's going to be thinking about things like that. This has got to be making Stephen Miller fume. This has got to be making Stephen Miller film. And I would kind of be surprised if this actually stuck.
Yeah, he's not like an ideological white supremacist Trump, but he is he relies on stereotypes to do assessments of people. And it's
like he can say these things because he has no consistent beliefs on anything. He can just come out and say this because I imagine a world where Trump was genuinely concerned when Tyson called him up and was like, hey, billions of our dollars are tied up in underpaying migrant laborers. You need to do something about this. He's like, oh my God, billions of dollars. I love those.
I wonder if he genuinely didn't know that the only way that his policy of mass deportations happens is if you go after people who have no criminal history.
I think that Trump is what people say George Lucas was when he was making the prequels, and that he is just surrounded by yes men who are just doing whatever he says. And I think that he genuinely believes Joe Biden imported 20, 30, 40, 50 million, 300 million illegal undocumented laborers to come in and do crime.
Yeah.
And Stephen Miller and the other advisors he surrounded himself with are like, yes.
Yeah.
Because they have ulterior motives. They have other things. They have more ideological goals that they want to implement by allowing Trump to say that and latch onto that popular narrative.
Well, and Stephen Miller is just strictly a Nazi.
I saw
Stephen Himmler.
Stephen Himmler, absolutely. I saw a video of Stephen Miller resurfaced from a couple years ago, and I've heard this video before, but I didn't know it was Stephen Miller, and I thought it was a joke, where he's out here at some rally back when he had hair, and he said, I'm sick and tired of picking up my trash in the streets when there are janitors whose jobs it is to do that. You tell me anybody else says that, and I think it's a joke. I think it's satire. That's funny. That's hilarious.
I'm tired of having a bedtime.
I'm tired of having a bedtime.
We need to rise up.
Big government overreach. But because Stephen Miller said it, it's like, yeah, you know what? I bet you intentionally mess up the hotel room so somebody else has to clean it.
Yeah.
I bet you don't make your damn bed in the morning.
Hearing somebody say, like, I shouldn't have to clean up after myself because there's janitors is, like, immediately a red flag.
Well, it's the soy right. And it's kind of crazy how the soy right has taken power, and they just need to perpetually be victims so they can justify the violence that they want to do onto others.
Yeah, exactly. I think we got some more Trump news in here, though.
We do have some more Trump news. Unfortunately, kind of at the other end of the spectrum, because while that is all about, like, I guess...
Trump's inconsistent. Who would have guessed?
Exactly. No ideological basis, unlike this very biased tertiary source podcast. But... you could trace everything back. I can build everything up axiomatically.
Oh, yeah, I could.
What can I say?
I started from first principles, and that's how I got here.
I did. It's true. Everything I've said has been true and consistent. I've never said anything wrong.
Every claim in here is tested against my moral code.
100%. 100. And if they happen to not age well, it's because the situation changed.
That's right.
It's because the situation changed. I've been presented with new information that otherwise was not available to anyone, really.
Precisely.
And then I've built up again from that. But I digress. This week, really last night on Sunday, Trump came out with another Truth Social post, which are just basically executive orders now, it feels like, saying ICE needs, quote, to do all in their power to achieve the very important goal of delivering the single largest mass deportation program in history, and they will do so by expanding, quote, efforts to detain and deport illegal aliens in America's largest cities, such as Los Angeles, Chicago, and New York, where millions upon millions of illegal aliens reside.
Direct conflict with the previous statements.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's just like, one, again, how are you going to do it? But I think the important thing when it comes to this order is the focus on Democrat-run cities in blue states, especially when places like, not even places like, places that are Texas and Florida exist. They're Texas and Florida. So the states that have the most illegal immigrants, the list goes California, Texas, Florida, New York, then I think Illinois, and then New Jersey. Maybe New Jersey and Illinois are flipped. That's not top 3, Chicago, New York, and LA.
Exactly.
Texas and Florida are way up there too, but Texas and Florida never receive like the ire that Democrat-run cities do. And it's all to sort of perpetuate this narrative that Democrats can't do leadership, Democrats can't run anything, and Democrats are the ones that want these violent, illegal people in these cities to, again, kill your daughter and sell fentanyl to kids.
Yeah, that's all it is. It's this narrative that Democrats are the ones importing just droves of non-white undocumented people to replace white people and to, kill your families, disrupt your communities with drugs and stuff.
Yeah, they just want to perpetuate the narrative that Democrat-run cities are these hellholes that honestly need to be regime changed. Yeah. Because that feels kind of like where they're building up to. You know what I mean? Yeah. And this leads into the soy right thing I say about Stephen Miller, who's just the epitome of all this. And it's like, they need to build these narratives to justify like this violence that they want to do onto others. They need to feel like they're like perpetually the victim so that they can just keep doing it. And it's a bit silly, man.
It is a bit silly. And once again, there's no way you get millions of deportations. There's no ways you get to the 3,000 a day number that Stephen Miller wants unless you go after, as Stephen Miller said, Home Depots and 7-Elevens. The people inside of Trump's administration are directly contradicting this idea that we're going to stop going after the good ones, as Trump said, that provide food through the agricultural industry to Americans.
Yes. And it's also the fact that no, Trump and administration officials aren't going around and showboating the deportation efforts that are happening in Houston, Texas, San Antonio, but they are blasting all of the ones that happen in LA, in Chicago, in New York, in Democrat-run places. They just want to make you think that those are hell.
Yeah.
Texas has the second most undocumented immigrants anywhere.
And that makes sense. It's a big state. It's right on the border.
Right on the border. It used to be Mexico.
Used to be Mexico. Big on that. Remember the Alamo.
Hey, huge on that, brother.
Yeah.
It's not right, I don't think.
It's pretty bad. And lastly, in immigration news here, Alex Padilla, senator, got arrested and, more just kind of taken away, detained.
Taken away and then thrown on the ground.
Yeah, he pulled up to a Kristi Noem hearing in a federal building, so that means he had to walk through metal detectors and stuff to get in. He had to be escorted by an FBI agent, so they knew he was there.
Also one of 100 senators.
Yep, he pulled up one of the people that Kristi Noem would have had to speak to get confirmed. He didn't vote to confirm her, obviously, but he walked in, he was asking her questions because he is a senator from California, and he got tackled and taken out. And the right just celebrated this. They just created a bunch of lies about it. saying that he like lunged towards her. That's what Kristi Noem said on Fox. She was like, he lunged towards
Wasn't
me.
Mike Johnson saying something like crazy about it too? That like, oh, I don't know. Who knows if he could be violent?
Yeah, they said he didn't announce himself. He just kind of pulled up. Not true. He said, I am Senator Alex Padilla.
It was literally on video. You could watch the whole thing. Like once again, it just ties back to the audacity the right has to just get out there and just lie.
The death of truth, man.
To lie maliciously and lie fervently and lie really every time they open their goddamn mouth.
Yeah. Of course, nothing's going to happen. There's going to be no consequences. Kristi Noem's not going to get like fired or impeached or anything like that. It's just another thing that we can add to it's another like bullet point on the list of violence that the right is enacting against everybody, center left, even center right.
Yeah, it's all sort of just kind of feels like it's building up to just cracking down on political dissidents, really.
Yeah.
And I don't like that. A senator should be able to barge into a room and ask a question, I think, especially in a federal building, especially to somebody that they had to vote to confirm or not to confirm.
Elected by the people.
Like, cabinet secretaries are kind of held accountable by senators. That's like the whole point of the situation.
Congress has a role in oversight.
They do.
Yeah, role in oversight.
Shout out Oversight Committee.
Shout out Oversight.
We don't have an Oversight Committee chair, do we?
Not yet, I don't think.
Love
well,
it.
it would be like the minority chair or fucking whatever it's called.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? The most powerful position in the minority party, but I'm glad that's unfilled right now.
Yeah, this is a good feeling.
This episode of Head in the Office is brought to you by Ground News.
Media literacy is a key component of our podcast here, but spotting the biases in news and reporting, especially in our nonstop media landscape, can be hard. Thankfully, the folks over at Ground News are working to make this a lot easier.
Ground News is an app and a website that collects news from all around the world and puts it in one place so you can compare coverage, uncover political biases, and learn who is funding each publication.
Ground News has a lot of cool features, such as the bias distribution, which shows you the political leanings of the sources reporting on each story, and the blind spot tab, which highlights stories that are being missed by either the left or the right. Ground News will even tell you your own news bias based on the articles you've read on their site.
If you're interested in Ground News, you can go to check.ground.news/headintheoffice for 40% off. The link is also in the description. We would suggest taking a look at their Vantage plan to unlock all the fancy features we referenced, and subscribing to Ground News also helps out the show, which we know you all want to do.
Special thanks to Ground News for sponsoring this podcast, and back to the episode.
Love that. Speaking of good feelings, we did have an update, like I said, Thursday night that came out when it comes to like the LA riots and LA being burned to the ground. So on Thursday, shortly after we recorded, news broke that Gavin Newsom did win his lawsuit against the Trump administration. The central legal question in the lawsuit was whether or not Trump had the authority to federalize the National Guard. And in short, the judge ruled no.
Let's go.
Which, yes, no, absolutely no, in no way, shape, or form. And then he ordered Trump to return control of the Guard to Newsom. I think it's funny the way that the federal government argued for this case, because they argued for it in the way that they've been arguing for all of the bad things Trump is doing. And the attorney for the federal government said just in court straight up that this shouldn't be subject to judicial review.
Apparently nothing should be subject to
no,
judicial
you don't understand.
review.
This action just shouldn't be subject to judicial review. No, nobody sued. He said nobody sued Lyndon B. Johnson for deploying the National Guard to defend like the black kids.
The kids trying to go to school during integration?
He's like, nobody sued them, so this one shouldn't be reviewed. He's like, nobody sued Nixon for using the military to deliver mail when the post office strike was happening. It's like, yeah, those are kind of like, I guess, more uncontroversial.
Yeah. This is using the National Guard against a civilian population, like purposefully.
It's pretty bad
for bad things.
Yeah. But it's just like all of their arguments in court, especially in the cases that they lose, have just kind of boiled down to the idea that like, no, Trump is actually a king and can do whatever he wants, and anything he says is law, and that's binding.
I saw some people arguing that like, the president needs to be able to make foreign policy decisions when talking about the National Guard and like the immigration and stuff.
Why would that ever?
I don't know. This isn't like
all these lawyers should be disbarred.
Well, they're arguing. I don't know if it was a lawyer, but these people are just arguing that like because they are a quote unquote invading force, as Trump has tried to suggest, then it's technically like a foreign policy issue. No, it's not.
No,
those are Americans that you're using it against. Also, people that have been living in America.
We still have not established whether or not this is an invasion. It's not.
It's not.
But the legal question hasn't been ruled on. Part of the legal question here was determining whether or not what was happening in LA was a rebellion. It's not. It's not. But not everything can be good all the time, always. And an appeals court did put a block on the order that the... Yeah, immediately, too. Like, hours later, an appeals court said, actually, no, National Guard can stay. We're going to rule on this case on Tuesday, June 17th.
Of course, why not?
A day after we record this. Notably, That was the part that was important to me.
The Supreme Court's got a lot of shit to do.
Yeah.
The Supreme Court's got some fucking work to do. Hopefully they can continue the judicial tyranny, as Stephen Miller calls it.
Yeah. I like this lawfare, actually. I hope it continues to go on.
Well, courts are good when I like what they're doing.
I wish courts could launch preemptive strikes. I wish courts didn't have to wait till an issue kind of makes its way through the system until somebody sues about it. I wish they could just come out and say, like, no, you can't do this, dog.
We need a preemptive ruling. We need an unprovoked ruling. Oh, my God. What else do we got on the docket here?
I think next we got to talk about another kind of massive thing that happened this week, and that was 2 Minnesota lawmakers. The assassination attempt on 2 Minnesota lawmakers and their spouses. So on Saturday morning, as I think we're all pretty much well aware right now, a man wearing like a latex mask and a fake cop uniform went to the homes of 2 Democratic lawmakers from Minnesota, from the Minnesota state legislature, and shot them and their spouses. I believe one of the couples died, and one of them is in critical condition right now. Obviously, prayers up to them. Obviously, this is a bad thing.
Insane.
It's an insane
Genuinely
thing.
Insane.
And it's kind of crazy how much like political violence has happened over this last year.
Yeah.
We had Trump get shot. Then we had Trump almost get shot with that guy at the golf course. Then we had Brian Thompson, and now we got this going on.
Yeah.
Seems like things are degrading.
Things are quickly degrading. And on this one specifically, there's just been a wicked amount of explicit lies told by people on the right side of the political spectrum, essentially trying to find a way to get out of the fact that, like, this guy was going after Democrats specifically.
And I think that's kind of like the crux of the like, obviously what's the important part of this issue is that 2 people were just like murdered in cold blood an act of political violence. But I think when you go a step beyond that and you examine what happened in terms of like the broader political environment, the story quickly becomes like, I don't know, a meditation on how the right just does and gets away with misinformation. Mm-hmm. It's kind of insane. But before we get to that, I do want to say the assailant was able to flee the scene and then was just on the run over the weekend until he was caught on Sunday. And notably, he was caught with a list of about 70 names. The news is saying that it's presumably a list of targets that included Tim Walz, Ilhan Omar, and other Democrats in the state, and also pro-abortion activists. Yeah. Very much just like a list of people, a list of Democrats he wanted to kill because he didn't like them.
Yeah.
That's an important note. A list of Democrats that he wanted to kill.
Very important note, including Ilhan Omar, one of the most progressive people in Congress. A Minnesota legislator.
Also a very important thing when you consider, because conservatives online kind of took this and tried to instantly spin the story by claiming that this guy was some radical Marxist Democrat oxymoron.
Of course.
And that this is what happens when the left doesn't think that they're getting their way. This is what happens when you don't appease the progressives. They'll just come out and kill you. Instantly, they got on here and they did this. And these stories got traction. I think the New York Post also reported on the New York Post, tantamount to Twitter when it comes to journalistic integrity, but still it's making it into a print outlet and whatnot. The people pushing that are obviously all evil liars. The only evidence they had is the fact that Tim Walz reappointed the guy who killed these people, to a board when he was reelected the governor. When the guy was appointed by the previous governor.
It was like a workforce board, and apparently there's like 60 people, and it's not actually like a legally binding executive.
No, it's just it's a political appointment.
Yeah, it's not like a board of people that like produces policy. It's more like a recommendations thing. Yes. And this guy, as you said, was on there before, and I think he worked for like a private security group or something like that.
He owned a private security group or something like that. And he did like work out in the condo, and he was also like an evangelical pastor, I think, or something like that.
Yeah.
All things important to consider when they're trying to pin this guy as a radical Marxist. Owns a private security group, evangelical pastor.
Pulled up dressed as a cop.
Some of these things don't really mix. You know what I'm saying? He pulled up in a car that was decked out like a police car because he had access to that through his private security form. I don't know. I don't know if that really mixes. You know what I'm saying?
Ilhan Omar and pro-abortion activists on a list of people that he wants to take out.
Yes.
Also, this idea that like, oh, when the left doesn't get their way, they start killing people. Like, bodies would have been dropping ever since October 7th in the United States if that was the case.
No, I'm saying, like,
but
that
didn't happen.
Functionally, like, that doesn't happen.
It's just not true.
Especially right now, instances of left political violence are far more rare than instances of right political violence. Pretty much everybody that does a big violence is like a conservative. Yeah. They're a white supremacist who writes a manifesto and they shoot up a goddamn fucking grocery store. It's a Republican that wants to kill Trump, or it's like a median voter that goes out and does something.
Yeah.
Like the only people we've really been able to like pin ideologically when it comes to big violent events are conservatives who go out there and do these things.
Or you got like Luigi, in his alleged crime. And he's a goddamn like median voter.
Exactly.
He likes Ayn Rand and he wants universal health care. Like, explain that.
It seems like his left position is just universal health care and everything else is just kind of...
And because that benefits him.
Exactly. He's just kind of like a guy that believes some things, but there's no ideology there. There's no real manifesto that actually like has like, ideological underpinnings, unlike, when a guy shoots up a Walmart and leaves a manifesto saying he wants to just kill Hispanics because, I don't know, one side of the political spectrum likes to stoke fears about immigrants coming into the country, but the AP did reach out to the shooter's friends and former colleagues, and they described Bolter, the guy who did the shootings, as a devout Christian who attended an evangelical church and went to campaign rallies for President Donald Trump. I think that kind of tells us all we need to know about this guy's political affiliation. Yeah. Which is important when we consider the spin that conservatives on really just Twitter put on there.
Oh, they've been outright rejecting every piece of evidence to suggest that he's just a Republican. Even like the crime itself and the list of people he wanted to go after, they've been rejecting all of it, just saying like, oh, it's not true.
Oh, it's not true. No, you don't understand. A Fed plant. Fed plant. Exactly. Feds did January 6th. Feds did this. Who knows? A Fed tried to shoot Trump.
Well, the Feds did. Yeah, exactly. Like you said, the Feds did January 6th. Everything that the right wing does that is publicly bad, the Feds are doing that. That's not us.
Exactly. And if this person has one single connection to any Democrat in any capacity whatsoever, whether it's a donation they made when they turned 18 for $15 or they were reappointed to a board and not actually considered, they were just kind of put on a thing that doesn't actually mean anything.
It's like,
that means they're a Democrat.
Yeah, like a Republican business owner gets appointed to a position that like doesn't really matter by a Democratic governor. Is that really that surprising? I mean, Tom Homan was an Obama appointee at first.
In no other context would they say an evangelical anti-abortion activist is a Democrat. Like it's only when they do something bad and they're like, I want to pin this on somebody else. Exactly. I want to get out there and maliciously lie.
Kamala Harris said she was going to put a Republican in her cabinet.
Yeah, like, I want to go out there and put out a farce.
Yeah, exactly. It's
absurd. And I've seen people like rightly call this out and respond to it in ways saying things like, the way to solve problems like this is to spread the truth faster than they can spread their lies. Statements like this, while they're like right in a way, are corny and kind of fundamentally like miss what the actual problem is in the first place. When you have a platform, because we're talking about Twitter. This is a conversation about Twitter specifically. Yeah. This kind of stuff, Fox News didn't even pick up the idea that this guy was a Democrat. You know what I mean? It's like the Twitter and the New York Post, but New York Post isn't news, like I said. When you have a platform that algorithmically like biases and boosts right-wingers and pays them for the engagement that their posts get, you incentivize the most insane people in society to go and make the most insane, false, and many times just evil statements possible. Lies spread faster than truth because finding the truth takes time. It takes time for the AP to reach out to the people that this guy roomed with, to the people this guy was friends with, and ask, what was this guy's political affiliation? It takes at least a couple days. It doesn't take any time at all to go on Twitter once this guy's, or go on the internet once this guy's name released, hit like a wiki page or some shit like that, look up his name, find any affiliation to Democrats. This guy's a Democrat. This is a result of radical Marxism, blah, blah, blah. And then your goddamn echo chamber of an audience, because things are already biased towards your favor, is going to see that and run with it because there's just a rampant mistrust with mainstream media too.
Yeah. And it's like when it comes to media, when it comes to social media platforms like Twitter, part of it is like the way, like you said, the way in which algorithms are set up, the way in which these companies make their money is by people posting as much as possible, playing the algorithm, and that incentivizes this kind of behavior. Not much to do about that outside of just like strictly regulating these companies.
Yeah, it comes down to like strict moderation requirements and whatnot. Yeah. It comes down to things like community notes actually being useful and not just kind of like a meme and coming through and saying, hey, this is not true information, blah, 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 and whatnot. But that's intense. That's kind of hard to implement. But it seems more and more necessary that we actually dedicate ourselves to finding an intense solution because lies just spread and people believe them. And there's an even deeper problem of just education. Yeah. People not being able to engage with the world around them in a genuinely critical way, only in a quote unquote critical way where they think if they just question anything and be intentionally anti-status quo that they're actually the smart one in the crowd when clearly it's not the case at all.
Yeah, and it's like, other than regulation, which seems impossible given how Congress works, the only other real response is for Democrats to, Democrats or people on the left, commentators, whatever, is to just like beat them at this game. Yeah. And I'm not saying Democrats should get out, or, you know, leftists or whatever should get out and just start lying and saying like every mass shooter is a Republican without evidence. But you have to go after them in such a way where it's like lying is like deleterious to the human spirit. You know what I mean? there's no other way around it in this political environment.
And that's why I say the framing around the idea, like, we need to spread the truth faster is just wrong.
Yeah.
Because
no,
the
you have
real
to be
solution
hostile
is
to liars.
you need to call them out.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's crazy because the like mainstream outlets like CNN and whatnot will frame things like this, like instances of political violence like this, as this only came about because political polarization in this country has come to a boiling point and we're just so polarized and we need to come together in the center.
Yeah.
When in reality, you're just kind of putting, like, I guess both sides of the aisle as like jointly responsible for this, when in reality, it is one. It is one group of people that get out there and lie maliciously and fast and as much as they can because they get money to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes they get money from the top down to spread the same lies. Sometimes it's end wokeness getting Twitter money for just being evil.
Yeah, and it's like when Trump gets out here and explicitly lies, or when Republicans generally get out here and the media gets out here and explicitly lies about, you know, the nature of immigration in the United States or what Democrats supposedly do to aborted fetuses or like whatever it may be. What do you think like the logical endpoint of a lot of that stuff is, especially as more political violence happens? It's going to be like a snowball kind of effect.
It's like negotiating with Israel.
To bring it full circle,
it's like negotiating with Israel. They're telling you they're going to fucking shoot you with a gun if you don't agree. And you're like, guys, we need to be more civil. Civility... It's not even that like civility politics is like fully broken down, because it won't, because Democrats won't let it, but it has broken down on the right. The right is anti-civility. They do not treat Democrats with like an ounce of respect.
Yeah.
I don't know why Democrats are still adherent to this idea that they need to just be the adults in the room. They need to get in there. The adult in the room would correct a child when they're misbehaving.
Yeah.
Not just let it go on and say, oh no, eventually cooler heads will prevail.
Well, yeah, and it's like, it's the adults in the room thing, and it's also, we need to appeal to like the moral character of the Republican Party. Like, I know you're not like this. Trump is just like, you know, scaring you into acting a certain way. It's like, no, the entire party's like this now.
The entire party's like this,
Like, Trump is, it's been 10 years. Like, Trump has fully captured the Republican Party. You just got to live with that and use every ounce of your being to fight back against them.
Yeah, the Tea Party won, and it's like even worse than people thought it was going to be.
We got to model it off of what Zoran is doing right now. I don't know if he'll win. You know, I hope he does.
I hope he does.
But the reason he has climbed so much, in part, is because he is just relentlessly hostile to Andrew Cuomo. And that is what we need every Democrat to do against their Republican opponents and just against the Republican Party broadly. It's just endless hostility and aggression, and call them out for things that people will not say about them.
Well, it's like Zoran listens to Hiddo.
Yeah.
We've been saying for years, you just need to yell at these people and you need to be hostile towards these people. And there's a difference between like right-wing hostility in like politics and what can be left-wing hostility. And I think Zoran's executing that like perfectly. He is calling out Cuomo for the bad things he did without letting it get crazy. Andrew Cuomo is being hostile towards Zoran in an Islamic sense where he's making his beard look bigger and making him appear darker. Zoran is hostile towards Andrew Cuomo in the way that he's coming out here and saying rightfully that Andrew Cuomo sued for 13 women's gynecological records to be released.
Yeah.
Because he sexually harassed or assaulted them.
Yeah, all you got to do is get out here and say the truth, and who cares if it's not civil?
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about like the end of the country here, brother.
Literally. And it's also like, I don't want a guy that sexually harassed people in one of the most powerful positions in the country.
That's an excellent point.
The mayor of New York City is like the biggest, most powerful state and local official ever. I don't think a guy who is a disgraced governor who had to step down his position in a sexual harassment scandal should have a shot at politics again. Yeah. And I think it's a shame on the Democratic Party that they're even allowing him to run in the first place.
And even if your opponents or, you know, the party as a whole, you can't pin them with something like, you know, sexual harassment like Andrew Cuomo did. You can at least get out here and adequately and accurately and reasonably describe the consequences of their policy action and rhetoric. Like, if Kamala Harris would have got out here and said, like, Trump literally wants to kill your grandparents, like we always say, I think that resonates with people. And you're not lying. You're telling the truth.
You're telling the truth, and you're throwing a little sauce on it.
And it's like, that's what he says about Democrat policies when it comes to, like, immigration or healthcare or whatever. He's like, they want people to die. They want your white daughters to die.
Yeah.
Like, just get out here and describe what's going to happen.
That was literally the line.
Yeah.
Like, there will be somebody who, like, dies as a result of, like, losing their Medicaid, right? Like... Democrats just need to fucking talk about it. They need to talk about political realities that we live in.
They got to lock in. They got to lock in. But I think that ends it for this episode. This beautiful, wonderful episode.
Brings us to the end of the episode. I love negotiation.
I love negotiation.
I love social media. And it's like we get on there and we do the social media thing too. You know, we do get paid to post in a way. But it's like I don't lie. I don't lie. I'm not rushing to breaking news and just saying something I cannot verify every single time. And that's the fundamental difference.
There's always going to be liars. Like, people are always going to get out here. They're either going to try to be the first ones to break the news, or they're just going to say shit for like a political reason. That's always going to happen, even if like you better regulate these platforms. But I do think regulation would help. And also you got to like focus on where this tendency to lie is coming from. It is core to the fascist program. Like, they don't care what's true. They care what benefits them politically. And if you don't go after the heart of it, which is like the sort of evolution of Trump's rhetoric and like the Republican Party completely capitulating to him, then you're never going to get at the actual problem. And it's them. Like, it's the fact that we have abandoned evidence, truth, as things that matter. And Democrats need to treat it that way. You can't pretend like they have some moral center that you can still appeal to. It's gone.
Democrats need to do something.
Lock in.
Well, it's crazy. Who'd have thought?
No, but nobody wants to work
Who'd have
anymore.
thought that our elected leaders need to lead?
They either need to do something or send some consultants our way to give us $1 million.
And then,
to study white men.
Heavy on that.
I got 2 white men that we could study real time.
Heavy on that. It just, every day, I'm just more and more convinced that nobody knows what they're doing.
Yeah. Every room I walk into is somebody that has no idea what's going on.
Except me.
Yeah, except me.
I do throw $20 million my way.
Throw $20 million my way. I'll turn it into 40, turn it into 80.
Yep.
And then on and on.
Give me $100 million podcast deal like Joe Rogan got.
Oh, my God. They could do that. I'll be astroturf.
They could give it to me. It doesn't matter. Like, market me, like, whatever. As long as, at the end of the day, it's just about spreading the ideological project. You know what I'm saying?
I'll take the astroturfing. Anyway, I think that brings us to the end of this episode.
It does. And that brings us to a very special list of people that we need to give a very special thanks to. And that list starts with Caden Kraut, Chris the Postman, Christy Beck, Mike Chaplinsky, Caitlin the Fed, Mark Yeager, Caleb Joy, Rich Taro, Tari Fergalaki, Max Veskis, Jacob Rogers, Colin Mooberry, Fixer Punk, Jim Egbers, Jeff Muzzy, Bagel Burrito, Cincy Alex, Joe Stenstrom, Adrian Sandoval, Chloe Sam 601, Colleen Cutsford, Yoke, Jennifer DeVoe, Crawfishin, Benneth Bennington III, Alexia Bonanti, Big Booty Beatdown, Sam Maloney, Ted Cruz's Boy Toy, Dictator, Jace Luke O'Shea, Cocker Tarlson, Danielle Jackson, The Word of Microsoft, Jennifer Science, Aaron and his Gundams, Darth Father, Taylor for Content, Corey Chambers, Retro Mondo, Emma the Dude Slayer, Veronica, aka V, Raxon, Ass Smith the Growler, Murder in a Trench Coat, Casey Lynn Kelly, AK Gon, Zach Lantian, Info Russell, Austin Greif, Marcus Corbett, Caleb Roper, Taylor Rensock, Cammy, Tylen Freeman, Isaac Hodges, Madeline C., Anna Valinic, KCC, Say Yes to Wes, August Particular Pickman, Sir Capilot, Jeff Science, Brendan's Egg, Froggy Gumdrop, Jackie Boy, Shameless, Coherent Babbles, MJ Sharp, Michaela Muncie, Wallace 3000, Chris T., Kashan Lala, Amanda R., Tyler J., Damian Blues, Particulon,
Memfrez, Ron Stiletto, Midwest Marxist, Joe the Mailman, Gary from West Michigan, Shawnee GG, Juniper Not Jupiter, Stacked Crabs, I Crowley, Urban Peach, Lord of Forlorn, Holt Forsyth, The Booty Snakes, Do Fairy, Chelceratops, Austin Lima, Lane Waltz, Azim Fida Hussein, Gorgeous Girl Mukes, Brooklyn G, Noverk the Dastardly, Goldthorn, Addie Book, Merlin, Cryobongi, Sergeant Pookie, Hoodie, Kim Kitsuragi, Rose Grimm, Kristen, Jamie the Young Extremist, Jack the Heathen, Archer W, Evan Mingo, AJ Torres, Elo Nico, Jake Hall, Seth Schmidt, Noah Sajas, Majo What, Ultra the Dragon, Mercy Boku, Dick Cheney and 6-Inch Heels, Luke Wechter, Henry Kraggles, Tristan Ringsmith, Yaya, Asura the Atheist, Aiden Reese, Deep State Agent, Puddle Pirate, Joshua Franklin, Southern Lefty, Lark 61, Justin Time 4, KC, Cannon Man, Troy H, Rark Muffalo, Nahan San Diego. Did I get it right that time?
Yeah, Sandy. Yeah.
I'll get it right eventually. Let me know.
That's gotta be it.
And my mom, thank you all so much for supporting us on Patreon. If you want early access to everything, it's over on the Patreon.
You know exactly what to do.
And if you want to support the fundraiser, that's all in the description.
And if you want to hear Jeremy's second Sabrina Carpenter album, right here is where it is.
We'll see you guys next time.